All right, appreciate that very much. Again, good afternoon. Andy Pedrazi here with Special Effects Academy, and we're going to get started on our Forex Weekly Outlook for the week of June 10th, 2018. Our agenda, as is usual, will be the currency strength meter, the fundamental announcements for the week, the major pairs, the setups in progress, and a few parting words. Differently, however, this time around, we did not have a proper end-of-week session last week because I was still uncertain as to whether I would close out all the trades Friday afternoon or not. So I did not have full results by Friday, 3 p.m. So I am going to change the agenda slightly today and present the ledger for last week, just to give an overview of what happened. So on the screen, you should be seeing the ledger for the week of June 3rd. We did have 9 trades, of which 6 were losers. I should say 9 closed trades, of which 6 were losers, 3 were winners. Our weighted pip profit for the week as of closing on Friday and including the open trades was a negative 74.8 pips, and a net profit on the account, not including the winning trades, however, is negative $226.47. I'll explain that a little bit. We have 2 open trades at the end of the week, and they are still open right now. A short on the USDJPY carrying 40.4 pips of profit as of the close of the market, and a trade on the pound Canadian, also a short carrying 55.6 pips of profit. I did include the pip count in the weighted pip profit. However, I did not add a dollar balance as these trades are still open. And of course, the pip value may change between now and when the trades are closed. They may go deeper into profit. They may go backwards. No way of telling. But I felt it relevant to add the pips as they were at the end of day on Friday, but I left the dollar amounts blank. So negative 74.8 accurate as of Friday close of market, negative $226 not accurate. The real value, if I had included these 2 trades, would be closer to about $130 negative, just as an FYI. I will at some point, I think, do a full video on the end of week, but I didn't have time to do it over the weekend. I had the alternator on my car blew out. I spent half the weekend getting that fixed, and I had a couple of other things going on. So my apologies, but I will get that done at some point and send it out. Does anybody have any questions regarding the ledger before I move on into our regular agenda? Okay. Then that being said, the relative strength meter of the different currencies plus gold and silver for the week that just ended, weekend of June 8th, as well as the week immediately prior. So we see that the market has been going back and forth on all counts. The winner one week is the loser the next week. The Kiwi, however, did manage to hold its own quite nicely on all weeks, but I think I'll go in order. So we see that the Aussie dollar has gone backwards against a few of the pairs it did particularly well the week immediately prior. The Canadian is the same thing. The ones that appreciated against the prior week are the ones that appreciated against the Canadian this week. The Swiss is also going back and forth. The Euro was a clear winner for the week. It did appreciate against pretty much every other currency. The only one it did not outperform was silver. The pound did give up some of its gains against the euro, so it backslid against the euro. It continued to do well against most of the other currencies, except the Kiwi in this case, but that was the same as it was the week prior. So the Kiwi did not change, just the euro popped up from the bottom to the top. The JPY continued to just stay at the bottom against everything, just as it had the week immediately prior. So the Japanese was the clear loser now for 2 weeks running. The Kiwi, a clear winner for 2 weeks running, except against the euro. The dollar, again, goes back and forth depending how you look at it, but in general, it did depreciate against the other currencies now for 2 weeks running as well. Everything except the JPY. And I'm not going to dwell too much on silver and gold, but of note is that silver had a horrible week the week prior, and just an incredibly wonderful week this week. Also noteworthy is that volatility is rising. We had a 2.37% range on the extremes, whereas the week immediately prior did not go that much above 1.5% in either direction. So keep that in mind. So that is pretty much, I think the clear message here is that the market is trending sideways and looks to be trying to either pick a direction or shift, a shift in the market, either going into a reversal or entering a sideways phase, which may last a short time or a prolonged time. No way to know yet. Fundamental announcements for the week. We do have several interesting things happening that may move the markets. Of course, we are going to go into Trump and Kim's meeting effective tomorrow during the U.S. evening hours. On Tuesday, we have some fundamentals coming out of the U.K. on the average earnings, and we also have the CPI, Consumer Price Index, coming out of the U.S. On Wednesday, we have CPIs coming out of the UK. We have economic projections from the Fed, as well as several Fed speeches and monetary policy statements. But more importantly, we have the Fed interest rate decision. Currently, we're at 1 3/4 points, and there is a little bit of expectation that there will be a change in the interest rate, but not enough that anybody has stuck their neck out to give us a forecast. So everybody's being very cautious and not trying to predict what the Fed is going to be doing. There will be a Fed press conference right after that interest rate decision, about a half an hour afterwards. So this will be, Wednesday will be an extremely interesting day in the markets. And in the evening, we will have the employment numbers coming out of Australia. But that's not it for the week. This is just up through Wednesday. We have another screen. And here we go into Thursday, where we have the interest rate decision coming out of the Eurozone. So we're going into back-to-back days of high impact interest rate decisions. And as usual, a Eurozone monetary policy statement, which is the norm after one of these interest rate decisions. Adding insult to injury, or rather giving us even more opportunities for gains, we have the Japanese interest rate decision coming out that very same day in the late evening. These are always really nice fundies because the Japanese never telegraph what they're going to do. There is no forecast, there is no anything. They simply up and do something, and they're very tight-lipped. They don't give advance warning, so it usually takes the market by surprise when the Japanese do end up making any changes. A couple of hours after the monetary, after the interest rate decision, there will be a press conference, usually by Kuroda-san, the governor of the Bank of Japan, or whatever they call the top guy at the Bank of Japan. And last but not least, in the early hours of Friday, we will have the CPI coming out of the Eurozone. So a very busy fundamental week ahead of us. And I will pick some of these interest rate decisions and other fundamentals to actually trade live. So I think this will be a week where our trading is going to be very light, based on the fact that I'm still very uncertain and very cautious about what the market is trying to do. So we're going to be trading very light as to actual trades and signals, and trading more heavily on these fundamentals. I we'll give everybody at least 24 hours notice on any fundamental sessions that we're going to have. So you'll get those emails, you get the exact time, and the link will always be the same. It will be the same link you're using right now, so that's a given. But I'll send out a full calendar at least 24 hours before I open up any session. That does cover our fundamentals, and now we get into the actual charts. This week, I'm not going to dwell too much on the charts. Why? Because I do not know what the market is doing. So I'm simply going to be very cautious going in. There are no predictions ever, but in this case, there's not even a hint of a forecast in my outlook right now. We can see from the euro dollar, for example, that we had come from an extended period of euro weakness that has broken in the past couple of weeks. It's been going backwards, not heavily. It's still definitely in a reversal pattern. It's going into dollar strength. I'm sorry, but this retrace is still giving everybody pause. So waiting to see if this continues heading up, or in fact, it is just a momentary pause for breath before it starts heading deeper. Moving on to the pound dollar, we see the exact same thing. Dollar strength and broken sometime in the last 10 or so days, it has been going backwards. USDJPY, same pattern. We can see dollar strength as it heads up. Then at some point in the last couple of weeks, it's broken and is now trying to pick a direction. You're starting to get the idea, guys. So this is just the market is really not doing anything that allows us to predict any long-term moves. We're trading by the seat of our pants right now. It's still a good trading opportunities in the 1 hour charts, but it really could go either way. So this week is going to give us a lot of fundamentals. I do plan on taking advantage of that. And when the markets are not acting in a, I guess, tradable or predictable fashion, the fundamentals are often the best thing we can trade. USD Canadian, the USD Canadian continues heading into dollar strength, and it's one of the few currencies that didn't have any sort of deep retrace. It did retrace a little bit, we can see that here, but in general, it has simply moved sideways for the most. And last but not least, the USD Swiss. This one is going in the opposite direction and has been going in the opposite direction for quite a while. We have this entire movement from the top down has been into dollar weakness, and it has not looked as if it is stopping anytime soon. We have played this one, the Swiss pairs, a couple of times in the last 2 weeks, and we've been nicely profitable with them. Likely I will continue to do that. It did do a retrace on Friday. This candle is going up, so we'll see if this week sees it starting to go down again. I'll happily trade this one down towards this trend line up here, which is a nice distance. This is a daily chart. On the hourly, this is a huge distance, so we'll see that one brings. I think this is the last dollar pair. No, I'm sorry. We still got the Aussie and the Kiwi. My apologies, the exotics. So the Aussie dollar going into dollar strength, except again, the last couple of weeks, maybe a little bit longer, we have seen a retracement into dollar weakness on the Aussie. And on the Kiwi dollar, the same exact thing. Dollar strength, followed by a more recent reversal. This one has hit a trend line and already bounced off of it. We'll see what this week brings, if we see a further strengthening of the dollar heading towards the bottom, or indeed if it has strength enough to pierce this trend line and start giving us some movement towards the top. And this is the last of the dollar pairs. We now move into Aussie Canadian. The Canadian has been acting very unpredictably in almost in every pair that's out there. With the Aussie CAD, we saw the Canadian significantly strengthening against the Aussie, and in the last, I'm going to say 2 or 3 weeks, it's gone completely in the opposite direction. The Canadian has not really done anything other than move sideways in really large movements, so nothing very tradable in it. And I've been very cautious in not really getting much into the Canadian. We have traded some of the Canadian pairs, and I think those have actually been some of our few winning trades in the last couple of weeks. But in general, I'm being more nervous about the Canadian than about some of the other pairs. Maybe unduly so. Maybe had I traded the Canadian more, the account would have been at least flat or a little bit profitable. But we'll see what this week brings. Euro Swiss, again, we see that the Swiss has been strengthening, as opposed to the USD Swiss, where it was all Swiss strength. In the Euro Swiss, it has gone to a new bottom, but did do a retrace the last week or so into Euro strength or Swiss weakness, whichever one you want to consider this to have been caused by. The Euro Pound, totally on ignore. It's been trading sideways for a significant period of time until it breaks out of the sideways pattern. And this is a daily, so it's really been sideways for an extended period of time, except for this brief push and then a drop. So I've been ignoring the Euro Pound for a few weeks now, and I doubt that it's going to change unless it does something notable. EURJPY, well, we all know the euro has had problems, so this is what we see. Euro dropping, a little bit of a recovery, then euro collapsing, and now a recovery in the last week. This is another one that we did manage to trade for some gain last week, and I think, do I still have a trade open? No, I don't have a trade open on this one, I think, but rather on the pound JPY. But we'll take a look at that. Actually, we won't take a look at that right now. We already did. But again, this is probably going to give us a little bit more opportunities. I expect the JPY to go again towards the bottom against at least the euro, possibly the pound JPY as well. And with the interest rate decision coming out later in the week, this may be a very good tradable opportunity. The Euro Canadian, again, Canadian strength, because basically the euro collapsing. It's not been the Canadian. The euro has been collapsing, and in the last week, it gained a little bit of strength. So we saw that uptick in the last 10 or so days. Pound JPY, and I think this is where I still have one open trade. Again, heading towards the bottom, doing a little bit of zigzag along the way as these normally do. It is currently in a zag and starting the next zig. So all in all, I would expect this one to head towards the bottom at some point. But again, have to look and see what the best opportunity to jump in might be. Aussie JPY, very sideways, wild swings, but still sideways action since around February of this year. We did have the massive Aussie collapse that started in January and just seemed to never stop. And it has recovered, but really not enough. It did a little bit of a recovery, but has been hanging out at the 83 level for quite a while now, and it is still there as we speak. Euro New Zealand and other sideways pairs, which in general I do not like. However, on the hourly, you do see some really nice opportunities. These are large movements if you look at the hourly, but on a daily chart, it really is sideways and seems to be just bouncing between a sideways channel. Pound Canadian, which I think is our last pair, we see the same thing happening as with the euro. The Canadian appreciated against the pound, or the pound dropped, whichever way you want to look at it. And then the last 10 days, we had that little bit of an uptick, and we'll see if this has legs to go back towards the top, or more likely, we'll start looking again for this trend line. This is the end of our pairs and the setups in progress. I'm sorry, this date have not updated it in a while, obviously, but it is the week of June 10th, that should say. I'm very sorry for that. USD pairs market is extremely volatile and uncertain. Market values are moving based on breaking news, And we had complete catastrophe of a G7 meeting in Canada this week, where Trump basically dissed all of the other world leaders, and most of the U.S. applauded that. I'm not going to tell you if I did or not, but just telling you what is in the news. The U.S. trade sanctions, of course, also weighing heavily, and the Trump-Kim meeting that will be happening tomorrow, and a few other things going on in the news. So the USD pairs are going every which way, and every time there's a little bit of news coming out on anything at all, it has the potential to move the dollar. Euro pairs, they've been moving erratically for a couple of weeks now. They go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. There is no rhyme or reason. Pound pairs, same exact thing. So you need to be very cautious on the euro and the pound right now. And of course, on the US, since we do not know what the next tweet is going to make happen. The Swiss has a little bit of inconsistent performance, especially against the euro. However, it's getting stronger against the dollar, and it has not significantly retraced at all for weeks now. The only one it gave up some terrain to was the euro, as I mentioned. So the Swiss may be a nice opportunity to trade. The CAD pairs are going in all directions, so it really depends on the counter currency. So it is being very inconsistent, very unpredictable. I still think that the CAD is probably a good currency to keep an eye on, because if we do manage to catch a move in progress, they do tend to move like 200 pips at a time. I would definitely love to capture 200 pips at a time, but we're going to be doing it in as safe a manner as possible. For our wrap up, our final words here, again, the theme is going to be winds of change. I do not know if the market is shifting or if it's just taking a breather. Last week, the results were better than the prior week, and really it was because we were far more cautious in our trading. But the market is still not steel. I'm sorry, I was probably very tired when I wrote this. The market is still very inconsistent in following through on signals. What does that mean? The systems we are using are not producing as good a result as they usually do, which is why we had one reasonably bad week the prior week to this one. And while this week was a loser, it really wasn't a heavy loser. But again, that's because I detected what was going on in the market, and I took a few steps to mitigate the risk. If we continue having weeks like these last couple of weeks, I am going to be forced to admit that the market is indeed shifting, and then simply deciding what systems I am going to trade that will make the most sense based on what the market is doing. So stay tuned for that. No cause for alarm. We always expect to have losing weeks, and I've been saying it for quite a while now. This is that prediction coming true. That's the only prediction I can always make, that at some point we will have losing weeks. So we're taking steps to address that. This week is going to be another one of caution until we determine the market's direction, and that's not necessarily going to be happening this week. And whether or not this is a reversal or an entry into sideways, otherwise known as non-trending market. We're going to continue to trade. That's what we do. But in times like these, caution and risk management become even more important than they normally are. So that's where we are at, and that is the end of my presentation for today. Anybody have any comments, questions, or anything else? Going once, going twice. Alrighty, then folks, I do thank you very much. It's been fun to have you here. We will be back again tomorrow at noon Eastern Daylight Time in our normal noon session for the Forex Trading Room. I look forward to seeing all of you there. Thanks a lot.